Hey guys, been a long time. Time to do another video. I've been meaning to, but life's been crazy and just haven't had time to sit down and record one, but we're going to today at special request of the Angry Bunny, aka Lillian. She asked for Minotaur, which I don't know. I've never seen her hit it, maybe never opened it, I'm not sure. But she wants to, and she requested the sequence on this one because there is a couple of things that you got to get exactly right if you really want to do well. This one is pretty standard. It's almost always 5 shocks for Minotaurs. Every once in a while there's something squirrely. It's 3 shocks or it's 6 shocks or whatever, but we're just going to cover the basic standard beach. These are almost always mortars. There's usually one right here in the middle, but this one is missing one. But you're going to treat it exactly the same because this one's a problem and this one's a problem. So the landing is exactly the same, and we'll get to that here in just a second. But for right now, you saw me barraging earlier, clear the mines, clear these 2 shock mines. It's unfortunate it took 2 arts. The barrage didn't clear enough, but so we got a nice clean spot. Where we're shooting for is right here under the building health statue, and that makes the most predictable spread towards the core. And then our basic 5 shocks, the rocket launchers, 6 at a time, the flamers, and the mortar pack. Basically any of those defenses, if they're anything else, it doesn't really change. It's 90% of the time it's 5 shocks. So we'll get to that here in a second. But first, something that in the Angry family we call a lot the typewriter landing when teaching somebody how to go at Minotaur for their first time. And like I said, it doesn't matter if there's 1 mortar, 2 mortars, or the 3rd one that's missing. As long as you don't have anything like a rocket launcher or a shock launcher that can reach the beach further, especially this one, we do what we call the typewriter landing, which is you take the Zookas down here to the bottom right to that flare right there, and then start unloading them. And notice exactly where I started unloading them, just on the edge of the mortar range. You can be a tiny bit to the left and that's okay too. But this flare is critical to get it down as deep in that corner as possible, close to the water. And then your basic flare landing, time the boat patterns just right. Now what I see cause a lot of mess is if you let any of the girls get to that flare, they're going to start walking up towards that cell in the sniper towers. You have to send the other flare over before they get to that and start going up the beach to keep them nice and low so they'll end up below this mortar range. So about there, when they're all just about to it, you're going to send over the other flare. And see how they all stayed nice and low below the tops of the boats. Now it's also important to place this second flare as low in the water as possible, but beyond where we want to start moving up, which is right here. Now you want the flare beyond it because otherwise the girls will get to it and then they'll start walking up the beach on their own. So you want to flare further left than where we actually want to walk. So as you can see here, they're all well below that mortar range. If the 3rd missing mortar was there, it wouldn't change. So what happens, that line, we want to end up in between that sniper tower and that boom cannon. But you got to throw the flare a little bit before the girls get there, but not too early. And then what happens, because they're all stretched in this line, and since they don't reach the second flare, they're going to respond to this new flare, and they all start walking straight up. Okay, vertically, that's only 2 rows of Zookas, which is very, very thin. And since these mortars are here, and even if the 3rd mortar was still there, by the time the mortar lobs its shot at the front girl, the back girls have walked out from underneath it, and you usually don't lose any at all. So we flared up in between that space where we want them to go, nice 2 rows wide. And then we're gonna delay landing brick for just a second, not too terribly long. But see how the mortar fires and it goes right over top of them. We had to throw that one because sometimes when they fire sideways and they get closer, they will hit the back girls, and of course a mortar is a splash damage and makes a mess. So you got to put one there. Sometimes you can stretch it up a little further and get away with it. I don't care for it, but you definitely need the next one for this shock launcher range. You can't peek it all on the shock launcher and risk it firing and taking out half of your girls. So drop that first one. The next one can gap just a tiny bit because they're getting tight. Little tiny peak, but not enough for the shock launcher. Now before, notice how, like I always say, throw your next smoke before your next flare. See a lot of people waiting around for the girls to get to that flare. Throw the smoke, you just saw me tap it, and I'm gonna throw the flare long before anybody even gets there. Keep them moving, don't let the bazookas stop or they will spread horribly. So now we've got a nice tight group, spreading the smokes just right. And like I said, the flare point earlier is right at the point of that building health statue. And you'll see the smoke come in here in just a second. Now you don't necessarily want the smoke exactly on that flare because most of the girls are gonna spread away from the core down here, and a few of them go behind this cell right here. So you've gotta put your smoke in the right place to cover that. You don't want it exactly on the corner of that building statue. And we'll see here in just a second where the smoke lands. So notice, like I was saying, I set that smoke to where it covers the back side of this cell because there inevitably, no doubt, will be one or two Zookas that go out the back and peek and lose the delay on the rocket launchers and wreck your life. So there's just a tiny bit of difference in the spacing between the smoke and the flare point. But we cover behind that cell, we cover up here between this flamer and this cell, and down below these two morts. We're gonna see where they spread here in just a second when they get there. And also, you wanna flare the core a little bit before they spread too far backwards, so it pulls them back forwards. There's the ones going around. I'm gonna start that over because I meant to pause that, but the 5 shocks, they're super standard. I'm gonna start it over and we'll go over those 5 shocks. And also, one point to that last smoke is you wanna throw it a little bit ahead of time, like well before your girls get there, because inevitably some of the girls are gonna try to peek. Well, when you flare the core, if they start moving outwards as the smoke expires anyway, you haven't really lost anything. If they peek, and then it's a second or two before the smoke expires, you've got a problem. But if we watch here, notice how I threw that smoke well ahead of time, so it's nearly expired by the time the girls settle. And then flare the core, and see those ones that were starting to peek out the back and the bottom. Now they are gonna peek out the side, but it doesn't matter because I've already sent the shocks. Now I'll be honest, these this second and third rocket launcher shock, I swear to God, when I threw them, I missed them. You see, I got them a little bit high in between the rocket launchers, and I panicked for a second and thought I missed them, but it's every other row in between the rocket launchers, dead center left to right, and ideally dead center up and down, but you do have a little bit of wiggle room. In a hit like this, the two important ones, well, really only one in this case, is the flames. Those flames will roast you instantly, so get that one out first, then the mortars, you've got some delay, and then start with the furthest rocket launcher group, which is the top one, because that shock takes the longest to get to the top of the map, then the middle one, then the bottom one. And you've got more time than you think, unless you're just absolutely late starting throwing them. But if you throw the flamer before the smoke expires, and then the next one, then the next one, then the next one, then the next one, you've got plenty of time. So 5 clean shocks. The machine gun down got a couple, the shock blaster's getting a couple, but not the end of the world. This will drop before the shocks run out with Battle Orders. Also, this account is 5.5. A little extra damage, and you can get there with 5 GBE. You can get there to the core, clear the mines, and 5 shocks with only 5 GBE right now. But you have to spread the smokes thin in the path, and you can't waste anything at all. I didn't even have a med kit there, so let's watch it one more time. Quick overview. Oh wow, I just noticed, I'm sorry, correction, this is a 6-4 account. This one is. I forgot I put out an extra GBE the other day when I was short on an attack, and it pissed me off, so I take that back. This is 6 GBE. So ignore what I said about being 5-5. My other account's 5-5, and so was this one for the longest time. But clear the mines. Typewriter land. I still don't even know how somebody came up with that, but nice and tight group. Flare up before they get there. Drop smoke. Drop another smoke. Flare up before they get there. Have the next smoke well ahead, and then this last one well ahead as they settle into position. Flare the core, and watch my shock sequence here. So the smoke timer is about 9 o'clock right now. I just flared the core, and about 11 o'clock start sending the shocks. 1, 2, 1, 2. God, I missed those so badly. I swear I would have. I knew as soon as I tapped them I was gonna miss a rocket launcher and have a breezy, but somehow they still managed to go. So there you go, guys. That's Minotaur. There's really nothing too crazy, just basic fundamentals and good execution. As always, flare points are very specific. You can't just send them to a general area and expect good result. You have to put them in a very specific space for a very specific reason to get the girls to follow the path that you want them to. So there's that, and hopefully it won't be so long until I do the next one for you guys. So have a good one and enjoy.